So hello. Um, welcome to the show. Welcome to Small Ball. We are live. Apologize for this little light situation here. I don't know what quite to do about that, but um, welcome to Small Ball on a Friday. Games one and two of the 2021 World Series in the books, so to speak, and we got more baseball to follow. So welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for joining me. And I'm going to try to keep this intro a little shorter today because I feel like sometimes, when I look back, I feel like I get hung up on the intro, get a little too into my my kind of lead up. And so we're going to dive right in. I have obviously World Series stuff to talk about and another very important talk about to conclude the show today that let's just say something irked me a little bit yesterday in the baseball world, and we'll chat about that for sure. So let's dive right in. So games one and two in the books. Um, two pretty standard, not too exciting games. And I said the other day that I feel like Houston is going to struggle to win on the road in Atlanta. And I felt like if Atlanta could split the first two games, which of course they did, I feel like they would take a huge and more so even than the usual sort of home field advantage shift, but a huge advantage in the series because I do feel like, for the various reasons that I mentioned the other day, Houston is going to struggle to win um, at Truist Park, and I think a lot of it comes down to the depth that the Braves have and the lack of experience for the Astros arms, especially in the bullpen. And I think when you have a Braves team that's yeah, that's better, much better. When you have a Braves team that's so deep and creates such such positive energy, and has kind of diverse ways of and different ways of scoring runs, it puts a lot of pressure on the pitching staff, and I think that's amplified when that pitching staff has to do it in an opposing ballpark. So I think I could see the Brave. I mean, I think Houston will take one of them, but I'd be very surprised to see the series head back to Houston with the Astros ahead. And I could even see potentially the Braves, sweeping these next three games. Um, but we'll see. But what's interesting though is like in a World Series, right, or any series, there's always those kind of like I don't want to call them boring, right? Because it's a World Series game, but like those less exciting games, right? Where it's a 6-1 game, it's a 7-3 game, right? And so there's some of those, and then there's some more, exciting, for us as fans, but for what that means as the players, more testing of the players, right? And we didn't see the personnel or the intangible aspects, I should say, of the players tested too much in games one and two, right? Both games were kind of settled early, and neither team was really tested in terms of their fight and their intangibles and their clutch and all that stuff, that great stuff that I love to talk about. But we will, right? That's kind of my point. Is like we got some of those games out of the way, and just the way it plays out in a 7-game series, traditionally speaking, you're going to get some of those, and then you're going to get some, game 5, 2017, game 6, 2011, that kind of stuff, right? Where we see the importance of leadership and coaching and intangibles. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because now the series shifts back to Atlanta, where all that stuff is much more difficult on the road than it is at home. So I think, that's another reason why the Braves, I think, are in really, really good shape in the series. And at this point, when I was picking the series, I had a really difficult time doing so, right? Because I felt like the Braves were the better team, and I couldn't really figure out why, right? Because all three of the major aspects, which I mentioned the other day, of a analysis of two teams, right? I look at defensive catcher, manager, and strikeouts, right? And all three of those categories I would say go to the Astros, but for some of the reasons I mentioned the other day, I did pick the Braves, and now at this point, I'm pretty clear on that, right? I think that it was, not as difficult of a choice as I once thought, and I do think the Astros are actually favored by most, um, but I don't see that, right? I think especially now that it's back in Atlanta, series tied 1-1, and another thing, I mean, the Braves, the Astros are struggling a little bit, with the McCullers injury and Greinke being off schedule and stuff, but the Braves with Ian Anderson going tonight, and they have really a a great shot to win that ball game, of course, tonight at 8:09 Eastern, and it's Ian Anderson and Brian Snickers. I saw an interview or a press conference with him today, and he was kind of talking about Ian Anderson's short but very impressive, certainly career so far, but an impressive, not so much. He wasn't speaking so much about his talent, but the way he was thrown into the major leagues, which not a lot of top prospects are in the way that he was. Right, third overall pick out of high school, and just as a young arm thrown into the fire. Right, got postseason experience right away, and not only experience, but really good um, experience. He has a 1.47 ERA in the postseason through 7 starts, which is remarkable. And we see a lot of young pitchers struggle, obviously, in the postseason early in their careers for obvious reasons, but he is not that guy, and he is turning into it. And, I've said many, many times, right? Regular season players and postseason players, they're two different players, right? And that's when the intangibles become so much more important. And to be honest with you, right out of high school, I didn't think that was a great pick for the Braves. I didn't think, I thought it was a bit of a reach. I didn't know if his talent was quite there to be a top 5 pick, but he proved me wrong, and all those intangibles, right? The pitch ability, the stuff that I love to talk about is, and that's difficult to really to pin down coming out of high school, right? When you see a guy in college for so many years, and Leiter and Rocker this year, and any plethora of guys, right? David Price coming out of Vanderbilt, um, and it's much easier to see the talent, right? You can kind of see, generally speaking, right? But those intangibles, especially for pitchers coming out of high school, right? When you're not watching these guys play all that much, it's tough to find. So I got to give the Braves a lot of credit. They've drafted extremely well over the last couple of years, and honestly proven me wrong in a lot of cases. And Ian Anderson's just a great example of that. And he gets the ball tonight against Luis Garcia, and it's I mean, I think the Braves certainly have an advantage there, right? No disrespect to Garcia, but Sporting, I think it's a plus 11 ERA right now in the postseason. Obviously, a couple games, but Anderson just has that. He just has that X factor, I think, in the postseason. So I'm excited to see what he does tonight. And I think, if I'm the Braves, I'm feeling really good about who I have on the mound. And honestly, against an Astros team, right, that puts a lot of guys on base. He's a great matchup for the Braves to have, right? I think like a guy like Max Fried, right, who's looked at as maybe the better pitcher, probably more dynamic stuff. But the Astros are not a team that get overpowered very easily at all. They put guys on base, they put pressure on the pitcher, and Ian Anderson, over the course of his career, has a short career, but over the course of his career has been exceptional at getting out of trouble, right? Pitching with guys on base, where Max Fried is more of a dynamic, sort of stuffy kind of arm. That matchup's, I think, a little bit worse against the Astros, who are going to have guys on base regardless of who they're facing, right? And Ian Anderson, what sticks out to me when I think about Anderson is his ability to work out of trouble and pitch with guys on base and in scoring position. So I think he's a great matchup for the Braves against the Astros tonight, and I think I would certainly expect the Braves to take Game 3. I want to mention something as well, and this is another example of where I can definitely see you guys, my fans, my wonderful, trusty fans of small ball who like to get on me a little bit sometimes, and sometimes is probably an understatement. But every once in a while, or probably more than that, I come out with these sort of intangible old school arguments that you guys just love so much, right? I say very, very much sarcastically, but okay, it's worth mentioning. I'll at least say this: it's worth mentioning. I don't know how much you can take from it. I don't know how true this is, but I'm just going to throw this out there, right? So the Braves um, weren't supposed to be here, right? They lose Ronald Acuña for the season early in the year. And many, of course, thought that that was the end of their season, right? With already, an uphill battle against a team like the Dodgers or the Giants, who were playing really well at the time and had a great season, and other Brewers and other teams. But once Acuna goes down, a lot of people feel like their season is over. And of course, those people were incorrect. So, and I've been very critical of Ronald Acuna over the years. I guess it's actually been 2 years almost since small ball started. That's pretty crazy. But anyway, trying not to divert too much. I've been extremely critical of Acuna. I've said on many occasions I think he's overvalued as a talent. But what I've always really loved about him is his leadership, especially at such a young age, right? And it's, again, this stuff is difficult to pin down and figure out exactly what you can take from what you see, the limited amount of stuff that we see from watching games on television. But from what I've seen, he's a great presence in that organization, even at such a young age, which is something that not a lot of guys have, right? So early in their careers. And it's worth noting, right, that when a guy like that goes down, when you lose him to injury, right, he's still in the building. He's still there. He's still in the dugout, right? He's still on the team, right? It's not like he got traded. It's not like he's gone, right? He's still there. So all of this intangible stuff that I always talk about, right, in a large part of which I factor into my evaluation of players, that doesn't go away, right, just because he's not on the field. So I think it's worth noting, right, that he can still influence this organization whether he's playing or not. And if I were to put my money on it, and this is not a quantifiable thing, so I couldn't, but I would guess, and I would argue that he's probably adding a lot of value to this organization right now, even though he's not on the field. And certainly they would love to have him on the field, and I am not suggesting that he is not more valuable while he is playing. But I am suggesting that it's worth noting, right? He's still there, and he's going to be there for probably years to come. And just because he's not playing, just because he's injured, does not mean that he can't still have an effect on the ball game, right? Think about just your daily life, right? If you're, let's say you have a group, another one of my crazy analogies here, but let's say you have like a group project, right, in school, right? And 4 people working on it, and you're doing all this work for a month, right? And you're preparing this presentation, and finally the day comes for the presentation, and one person gets sick, right? Person A is sick that day, doesn't get to come to the presentation, but then the other 3 give the presentation. It goes really well, and what have you. Should person A not get credit for the presentation? Of course, person A will, because they did all that work, right? They helped everyone else sort of set that up, and I kind of see a lot of that here, where although Acuna is not actively participating on the field, he's still in the building. And of course, we can't say or quantify how much value he's exactly bringing, but I do think it's worth noting that he's still likely, I would say, having a huge impact on this organization without playing. And again, that's another intangible sort of crazy Tristan argument, but something to think about. Okay, I think I want to get to so we're not quite at the timestamp that I was planning on getting to this topic at, if that made sense. But this could take some time because this is really bothering me. And during the World Series, of course, that's the primary focus around baseball. But something happened yesterday that is, I don't know if surprising is the right word or just dumbfound. I mean, it's preposterous, and you might know what I'm alluding to already. What I am alluding to is the firing of Jace Tingler by the San Diego Padres. Now, I'm gonna make a bold statement here that could certainly be proven wrong. Right, I run the risk when I make these bold predictions of being very wrong, but that's sort of my job. And so the Padres are finished. The Padres are done, right? And that sounds extremely bold because of how much potential they have, right? But the Padres are done. And it's not just because they fired Jay Stingler, although this is the nail in the coffin for me. I mean, this is maybe the worst decision of a managerial amplitude. That's a word, right? I'm pretty sure that's a word. I don't think it's the right word, but it sounds cool, so I'm gonna use it. Of the managerial amplitude that I've ever seen, which like maybe recency bias, but like it's pretty bad, and I'll tell you why. So they hire so quick, right? It's not even like they fired him, and then they do a big search, right? And there's guys like Ron Washington, who have been in conversation, and Bruce Bochy, who may or may not be looking to come back into managing, but they hire Bob Melvin right away, right? So that would indicate to me that they were seeking out Bob Melvin, formerly of the Oakland A's, and that played into their decision to fire Jace Tingler, knowing that he was the next guy. Maybe they were even in conversation before. Okay. Jace Tingler, 2 seasons with the Padres, and he's out. So if you've seen my show before, there is a pretty good chance that you know how much I like Jace Tingler. I think, honestly, I could probably say that over his last 2 years, which are his first 2 years as a manager, he was a rookie manager last year in 2020. And I can honestly say that he's probably the best manager in Major League Baseball in my eyes. He is absurdly aggressive. And I mean aggressive from an old school standpoint of moving guys around, making things happen, putting pressure on defenses, riding starters pretty deep into the game, getting a lot out of the starting pitching, and and look, we've seen over the last 2 years, and a lot of people give a lot of credit to like guys like Tatis and Machado and some of the leaders and Hosmer and for creating such a good culture in San Diego, which certainly is undeniable. I mean, one of the best cultures and just energies in the league. And no one gives credit to Jace Tingler for that except for, I guess, me. So he checks every box for me, right? The things that I look for in a manager, right? Getting your team playing with energy, with passion and playing well. Of course, in-game decision making, and also just creating that broad picture sort of organizational culture. And he checks every box for me. I was gonna do a managerial sort of ranking, some sort of hierarchy or list or something like that. I was thinking of doing that pretty soon, probably after the World Series. And if I were to guess, he would, I haven't done my analysis, but he'd probably be number one. And now he's out of a job, which is absolutely preposterous to me. And whatever team lands him, which I hope very, very much that that somebody does, I think is getting a phenomenal asset. And I mean, it's the elephant in the room, right? I'm not gonna deny it. He was fired because he's not an analytics guy. And he, like every other manager, says that he's on board, right? But it was very clear that he wasn't. And I think in large part that was a factor in their success in 2020. And they had a down year this year. And for some reason, the San Diego, front office felt like he was a culprit there. And what's interesting is that they fired Andy Green to hire him, who I was a big fan of, right? And when they fired Andy Green, I was a little skeptical. But right away, when I started to look at Jace Tingler and what he would be able to do as a manager, and obviously there's not a big track record there. He had never managed before, but there was just something about him, what I heard in interviews and stuff, and I can pull up, I'll try to like maybe link my first ever impression, right? I remember the clip that I did when they hired him, and I remember like being very surprisingly impressed with him, right? For how little I knew about him. And that just grew over time. And he's really impressed me over the last 2 years. And it's very unfortunate, I think, to see him on his way out of San Diego, because what he was building there was incredible. And I mean, you can't, I mean, in the down year, and we talked about this the other day, right? Even baseball, even front offices, right, fall into the trap of comparing and analyzing managers based on expected wins versus actual wins, right? And there's so many other factors that go into it. It's so easy to blame the manager, but what he was building in San Diego, I mean, he deserves so much credit for that. Um, I can't think honestly off the top of my head where he could fit next, but I'll definitely give that some more thought, and I certainly think whoever gets him, hopefully somebody does, is getting a real asset in the dugout. And I don't want to I don't want to bang on Bob Melvin, right? But to add insult to injury, Bob Melvin is the opposite of what I would be looking for if I am a San Francisco, or excuse me, San Diego front office member, right? Number one, he's extremely analytical. This is a um, very intangibly driven team with a lot of really strong leaders like a Hosmer and a Tatis, who's an emerging leader, but he's beyond emerging at this point. I mean, he's just a full blown franchise player, both on and off the field. And Bob Melvin, he's over the course of his career, he has become increasingly analytical. He has been his amount of offensive aggressiveness, like I talked about it before, and creativity is probably the better word for it, has declined over the course of his career at a pretty linear rate. And certainly that's what these guys are looking for, is guys that aren't going to screw it up, so to speak. Obviously I say that with, a little bit facetiously, because I think it's quite the opposite. And I think I certainly favor Tingler's style over Bob Melvin. But I mean, he's not had a particularly successful career either. I mean, to be quite frank, he has a 514 winning percentage. Um, he's not very good in the postseason, and that's quite an understatement. He's has a 370 winning percentage in the postseason. If you want to look at that, his winning percentage in Oakland in the postseason was 350. I mean, the Padres won a playoff series last year against a top five, probably top three, actually probably top two franchise in Major League Baseball, in the St. Louis Cardinals, with a rookie manager and a extremely young and inexperienced team. They won a playoff series. So it's absolutely mind-boggling to me, honestly, that Tingler was fired after 2 seasons of which I thought he had some of the best managing I've ever seen. And again, to make it all worse, I think Bob Melvin is not at all the right man for this job, and I don't mean any disrespect there, but I just couldn't really believe it, honestly, when I saw that Tingler was fired. I mean, and it wasn't so much that I couldn't believe it in the moment, because it had been sort of approaching and lingering, and I had heard some rumors and stuff. So I was kind of prepared for it, but this marks the end for San Diego. And I know that sounds extreme because they're very much just scratching the surface of what they can do. But we saw this year there was just something about them that wasn't clicking. Um, and the real reason why I think this is the end for them, besides that whole spiel, is I can very clearly see now, Tatis obviously signing the huge extension. I would be not at all surprised if he ends up traded over the next couple of years. Because I'm going to be definitive about it. I don't think Bob Melvin is going to work. I think they're going to see a huge drop off in performance from Tingler to Melvin. And I think this team is just going to get older. They are not going to win enough games in that division. And Bob Melvin's going to be on his way out pretty soon. Certainly, if Tingler wasn't getting the job done after winning a playoff series, the Padres are right now the third best team in that division, and I think they're going to get even worse now. So Melvin should be on his way out soon. It'll be another manager for Tatis, and I can definitely see if they start to decline, which obviously I'm expecting they will, that he will ask to be traded. I can kind of just envision that in my head right now. And so as these guys get older, the leaders sort of graduate, and Hosmer ends up leaving, and Machado's getting up there, and Tatis kind of enters his prime. Maybe he'll stay loyal to San Diego, but I can totally see a scenario in which they're struggling. They're the third best team in the division, and they're just not able to compete. And Tatis will ask to be traded. So, I mean, I could go on about this for hours. I mean, there's so many reasons why the Tingler firing is a terrible move by the Padres. And it's a little bit, it goes past the point of just a bad move, right? It bothers me a little bit because I think that he deserves the utmost credit among managers in Major League Baseball, and he's gotten the opposite, and he's now without a job. So I hope someone picks him up. Whoever does will deserve a lot of credit and will be rewarded for that, I think. And Bob Melvin comes in. We'll see. I don't think he's, certainly, as you can tell, I don't think he is as good of a manager as Jace Tingler, and I don't think he's as good as Andy Green either, who Jace Tingler succeeded. So I think the Padres culturally, took a hit this year, especially with the Giants returning to form like they did. And I think this is going to fall off the wheels in San Diego after this firing. I can definitely see a potential sort of disturbance in the locker room. I would assume, unless there's something I'm missing, that Jace Tingler was very well respected in the organization amongst those young players. And again, Bob Melvin just not the right fit for that environment and for that room. And there are a lot of things going on right now in San Diego that if I was a Padres fan, I would be a little concerned about. And I just think that I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say it. I think these front offices are just not good at picking the right guy to right the ship. And it's tough. I mean, again, if you're going to fire him, right? And I think the fact that they hired somebody so quickly indicates, like I said, that it wasn't just that they didn't want Jace Tingler. They wanted to go out and get Bob Melvin, right? So that's another problem in and of itself, right? There's Ron Washington out there. There's Bruce Bochy out there. But those aren't the kind of guys that that these front offices are looking for. And Tingler was perhaps the least analytical manager last year in the league, and you can certainly draw comparisons to that and how much I like him. I mean, I'm not going to deny that's definitely something that that interests me. as an analyst of managers, if that's a thing. But I think that's why he's without a job now, and that's really unfortunate. Um, Mainly for the Padres, right? I feel bad for Padres fans. I think this was an emerging culture and team, and a lot of players on that team that I really like and want to root for. And I can't see now, honestly, with Bob Melvin, them certainly winning the division. And I think, now that the Giants have figured it out with Gabe Kapler, right? I think he's I was critical of that hiring, but he proved me wrong. And now with Kapler and Dave Roberts, and I don't think maybe even the Rockies. I could definitely see them trying to look elsewhere for a manager. I could see Tingler signing there, right? So I think this is a huge mistake for the Padres, and one that again, it goes beyond just being a dumb move. It bothers me a little bit that Tingler is not given the respect that he deserves, and I guess it is what it is. But like I said, someone picks him up, which I hope they do. They will be getting a very valuable asset. So that's going to do it for today's show. That sometimes I just have a. I've done this show, like I said, for 2 years now almost, and it's I used to sort of um, estimate how long like my rants would take. But now that I'm more comfortable and I'm feeling a certain way about a topic, I know to give it a little bit more time. And so I did that today. So that segment ran a little long, and I did factor in some time for that. So, we're learning. We're learning here on Small Ball. Thanks for joining me. Game 3 tonight. Very excited for that. Again, the Braves are going to win it. I would be very surprised if they don't. I feel comfortable saying that. If I was a betting man, which I am not, I would put money on the Braves, but that's just my 2 cents. Have a healthy, happy, and safe weekend. And I don't know when we'll be back on the show, but it's possible tomorrow. I said that the other day and it didn't happen, but I think it's a pretty fair bet to expect a show this weekend and potentially tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be back at it soon. And thank you so much for watching. And like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And you guys know what to do. I don't have to tell you guys that. But yeah, spread the word. Anybody who you think would be interested in a little small ball, send it their way. And I do appreciate the support, the viewership, and I hope you enjoyed the show. So enjoy Game 3, and we will definitely have some stuff to talk about over the weekend. So thanks for watching. Take care. Peace.